Uh, you know that there are four different types of tissues present in our body: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, nervous tissue or neural tissue, and muscle tissue. So, those are four different types of tissues. So, uh, first we'll talk about the epithelial tissue. We'll see the location and function of the epithelial tissue. And then we'll see the classification of epithelial tissue, how the cells are arranged in the epithelial tissue. We see that different types of cells and arrangements of the cells. So next lecture, we'll talk about the connective tissue, nervous tissue, and muscle tissue. So first, in general, where you will find those four different types of tissues. Before I start to talk about the epithelial tissue, first we'll see where the four different types of tissues are found. Nervous tissue forms the nervous system. So very simple, right? Nervous tissue forms the nervous system. And you know that nervous system consists of a brain, a spinal cord, and many nerves, right? So those structures are formed by the neural or nervous tissue. Then the muscle tissue. You know that there are three different types of muscle tissues are present in our body. What are those three types of muscle tissues? Skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Okay, skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. So we'll see where we find those three types of muscle tissue. First, the skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles are found attached to the skeleton. Attached to the skeleton. And they help to move the bones at the joints. So skeletal muscles help to move the bones, and they are attached to the skeleton or bones in your body. Another location you can write it down is in the body walls. In some areas we don't have bones. For example, you see here in your abdominal wall, right? Here you don't have any bone, but the abdominal wall is also formed by the skeletal muscle. Make sense? So mostly attached to the bones, also in the body walls. Then the cardiac muscle, highly specialized type muscle tissue, only present or found in the heart, cardiac muscle. Okay. Then a smooth muscle. Smooth muscle tissue is found in the wall of tube-like structures of your body. Wall of tube-like structures. Can you name a couple of tube-like structures in your body? Esophagus, yes. Small intestine, large intestine, right? Anything else you can think? Arteries. Arteries, blood vessels, right? Very good. So, trachea, respiratory tract, right? So, in the wall of those tube-like structures, you have the smooth muscle. Number two, in the wall of the hollow organs. Hollow organs means those organs have cavities. Example, your urinary bladder, right? Hollow organ. your uterus, stomach, those are the hollow organs. They have large cavities inside. Lungs is also smooth muscle tissue and other internal body organs. For example, lungs or kidneys. Okay, so other internal body organs. Internal body organs. But lungs also heavily filled with elastic tissue. That's why it has a lot of elasticity. It can expand and recoil, right? Not purely smooth muscle. Okay, so those are the locations where you will find the smooth muscle. So those are three types of muscles and their locations. Then if you go to the epithelial tissue is found on the body coverings of your body. Give me an example. What is your body covering? Skin, right? Your nails. Those structures are formed by epithelial tissue. Number one, right? Number two, inner linings. Number one is body coverings. Number two, inner linings. For example, you have artery, it's the tube, and wall. This is the wall of the artery, and innermost layer is formed by thin innermost layer. That is the inner lining. Is formed by the epithelial tissue. You have trachea. Okay, so the tracheal wall inner lining is formed by the epithelial tissue. So these are lining epithelium. Okay, and number three in the glands. So those are the main locations where you will find the epithelial tissue. Body surfaces or coverings, inner linings, and in the glands. Connective tissue is the most widely distributed tissue in our body. That means in most of the structures of the body you have connective tissue. Most widely, most abundant tissue type is the connective tissue. Your bones are connective tissue, cartilages are connective tissue, fats are connective tissue, your blood is a connective tissue, right? So you see, they are present almost everywhere. Fats are present almost everywhere. Blood, bones, cartilages, right? Those are connective tissue structures. So now you got a good idea where different types of tissues are located. Now we will start the epithelial tissue. Now we classify the epithelial tissue in two ways. We classify the epithelial tissue in two ways. Number one, uh, shape of the cells and arrangement. Shape of the cells and their arrangements. That is one way we classify. Number two, by location, where they are located. Okay, by their location. So first, we'll see how we classify the epithelial tissue based on their shape and arrangements. This one I have actually explained in your lab part. There are different shapes of epithelial tissue. If you see, the cells are tall, like this. These are what? These are called columnar, right? You remember? Columnar. Tall cells and nucleus. Columnar. Another type, if you see, the cells are flat, like this. Called what? Squamous. Very good. Squamous. If you see, the cells are cubical shape. That means cuboidal, right? Height and width almost same, like cubicles, cubes. So cuboidal. And if you see, the cells change their shape. Don't have any particular shape all the time. They're changing their shape. That is called what? Transitional. Do you remember now? Transitional. Okay. So columnar, cuboidal, squamous, and transitional. That's the shape. Now arrangement indicates how many layers you have. If you see, a single layer is formed by the cells. That is called what? Simple. Right? So this is what? Simple columnar. Make sense? This is simple cuboidal. Make sense? Now if you see, the cells have formed more than one layer. That is called what? Stratified. Right? So this is stratified cuboidal. Right? So single layer is simple. More than one layer is stratified. So this classification is based on the shape of the cells and the number of the layers. There is another type of columnar epithelial tissue where the cells are columnar, but the height of the cells could be different. All these are columnar cells, but their height is different. And when you see this under the microscope, since the nuclei are located at different locations, it will give you a false impression of multiple layer, right? But actually it is a single layer. That is called what? Pseudo stratified. Pseudo means false, right? Fake. False stratified. That means pseudo stratified. Pseudo stratified columnar. That means false multiple layer. Actually it is single. In pseudo stratified columnar, you will see cilia. Okay, so that is one way, shape and arrangement. Now we'll see by location. By location, we classify the epithelial tissues into two types. By location, we divide into surface and lining epithelium, and number two, glandular epithelium. Very simple, right? Surface and lining epithelium, glandular epithelium. If you see the epithelial tissue present in the body surface, that means skin or nail or inner lining of the tube-like structures, those are surface and lining epithelium. Those epithelial tissues are present inside the glands, those are called the glandular epithelium. So based on their locations, we divide into two. Now, important characteristics or properties of epithelial tissue. What are the characteristics you have in epithelial tissue that is different than other tissues? Number one, if you see the epithelial tissue, the cells are attached to each other side by side. You have seen every time I draw the epithelial tissue, what I do? I draw a number of cells and attach them side by side, right? I don't draw like one is here, another is here. I don't do that, right? That means what? The epithelial cells are attached to each other. Cell membranes are attached to each other by intercellular junctions. Special attachment. That is number one. Special attachment. Number two, you will see every time when I draw the epithelial tissue, I draw a line. This is called the basement membrane. And one end of the cell is attached to the basement membrane, upper end is free. So this is called the free or apical end. Free end is the apical end, and this is the basal end or attached end. So that is another property. So special attachment. Number two, apical end and basal end. Number three, avascularity. Avascularity means absence of blood vessels. In the epithelial tissue, there is no blood vessels. Now the question is, then how the epithelial tissues get nutrition and oxygen, right? If there is no blood vessels there. Epithelial cells get their nutrition and oxygen from underlying connective tissue. Always epithelial cells are attached to the connective tissue, underlying connective tissue. And you have blood vessels here. See, you have blood vessels in connective tissue. So from here, by diffusion, nutrition and oxygen enter into the epithelial tissue. By what? Diffusion from the underlying connective tissue. So avascularity is another property of the epithelial tissue. Another one, very important, high rate of regeneration. High rate of regeneration. That means the epithelial cells can quickly multiply, regenerate, and we know that already. You know, often our skin dies, right? You will see that you can sometimes take the skin off, right? Peel the skin. That means the skin cells are dying all the time. Epithelial cells are dying, and new skin cells are being produced to replace that, right? When you drink something hot, very hot, coffee or tea, inside the mouth you have the lining epithelium, right? Lining epithelium, and all the time when you drink something hot, some cells are dying there, and quickly those cells are being reproduced, regenerating. That is another very important property of the epithelial tissue. Okay, so those are the important properties of your epithelial tissue. Now, in next few slides, I'll go over some pictures of different types of epithelial tissue. You already are familiar to these pictures because you have seen this and you have also seen this under the microscope. Two things you have to focus. Number one, how they look like under the microscope, right? Number two, important locations. I'll mention only the important locations. You will underline or write it down, and you have to remember those locations particularly. Okay, those are the important locations. So first, the simple squamous epithelial tissue. That means a single layer of flat cells. You see this picture like fried eggs, right, are attached like this. Why this is simple squamous? You have to be very careful when you see the tissue under the microscope. You see these are alveoli inside your lung, and the wall of the alveoli you have the cells actually like this. You see now these are the flat cells, nucleus inside. This is another cell. This is another cell, right? So these are the flat cells forming a single layer, right? So that's why simple squamous. So all those lines have are formed by flat squamous cells. Where you will find the simple squamous. Simple squamous are present in the alveolar wall of the alveoli or air sacs in your lung. Number two, inner lining of the blood vessels. Inside the blood vessels, arteries, veins, capillaries, okay. Inner lining is formed by simple squamous. Okay, and so just remember those two locations. Number one, alveolar wall and inner lining of the blood vessels. Those are two main locations. This is the simple cuboidal. Why? If you see this histology, you will see many tube-like structures, and in the wall of these tubes you have the cuboidal cells like this. These are the cuboidal cells, nucleus. Okay, so you see a single layer of cuboidal cell. Okay, single layer of cuboidal cells. That's why it is simple cuboidal. Where you will find in the kidney tubules. Inside the kidney, you have millions of microtubules, very microscopic, small. In the wall of those tubules, you will find the simple cuboidal. Now, sometimes it's difficult to see the membrane, so it's you must be very careful. Some membranes you won't see under the microscope clearly. So, if you see here that one cell is like cuboidal, then definitely other cells are same. So, you should be careful. Here, you see very clearly, this one has the clear boundary. So, this is cuboidal, so others are cuboidal.
Some of those don't have a nucleus, so they're just going to
When you do make the slide, you make thin slice, right? So sometimes nucleus can be destroyed or get out from the cell. It's a dead cell. Okay. Uh, so kidney tubules, one location. Ducts of the glands. Ducts are actually tube-like structures. So ducts are also tubes. Ducts of the glands. Okay. So just remember those two locations, kidney tubules and ducts of the glands. This is a simple columnar. This is very easy to see. You see that in each side you have a single layer of tall columnar cells. So, simple columnar. Where you will find the simple columnar epithelium? Number one, in your gastrointestinal tract from the stomach to all the way down. But above the stomach, you have different lining. That means in your esophagus or mouth, you have different lining. So in your GI tract, starting from the stomach to all the way down. Stomach, small intestine, large intestine, right? So those are the structures. You have the simple columnar epithelial lining inside stomach and below. Let me see anything. Uterine tube. Uterine tube. So just write down stomach, small intestine, large intestine, uterine tube. Those are lined with simple columnar. Now this is a pseudo stratified columnar. In pseudo stratified columnar, you will find the cilia. Cilia are soft hair-like structures, right? And the apical end of the cells. That means in the upper free end, you have cilia attached. And where you will find the pseudo-stratified columnar in the upper respiratory tract. That means in the nasal cavity, in your bronchus, trachea, upper part of your respiratory tract. Nasal cavity, trachea, bronchus. Why you have pseudo-stratified cilia, ciliated columnar in those structures? Because you know that in those structures mucus secretion occurs, right? You know that you sometimes you cough. Mucus secretion occurs. And cilia do what you see, there are millions of cilia there and they beat like this to push the mucus down. To push the mucus what? Down. To clean the surface. You know that when you inhale the air, dust particles go inside, right? And they get trapped. They get attached to the mucus, sticky surface. And then the cilia will push the mucus down. So that's why you have cilia. So if you think why, cilia are there, then you can tell in which structures you have that kind of epithelial tissue. Yes.
They're pushing the mucus down, or they're pushing the particles down from the outside?
What particle?
What?
What particle? What do you mean by particle?
Like they things that trapped from the air.
Yeah, that's what I said, that the dust particles. This is your trachea, okay? This is the wall of the trachea and the surface has mucus, right? So the surface is what? It's sticky. So when you inhale the air, you don't see the dust particles. Those are so fine most of the cases, right? So, but they are getting in and they will get attached to the mucus surface. Okay, then the cilia, yes, you have million of cilia here. They will push the whole mucus down because mucus now contains the dust, right? Mucus contains the dust. So not the you cannot separate the dust anymore because it is attached to the mucus. So push the mucus down. Then new mucus secretion will occur. Continuously mucus secretion is being occurring, right? So new mucus secretion will occur and again it will push it down. Okay, now we'll talk about the stratified type. First, you see, this is the stratified squamous. That means many layers of flat cells, and that makes sense. You see here, many layers of flat cells. When you see the stratified squamous, don't look in the bottom part, very inner part, because you have the stem cells here. So they look different. You will see this part, many flat cells. Uh, there are two types of stratified squamous. One is called keratinized, another is called non-keratinized. So keratinized stratified squamous and non-keratinized stratified squamous. Why one type is called keratinized? Because inside the cells you have keratin filled cells. Keratin is a protein. Okay. So in keratinized type stratified squamous, the cells are filled with that protein called the keratin. In non-keratinized, you don't have the keratin, that protein. Now, where you will find the keratinized? Keratinized type stratified squamous you will find in dry surfaces. Dry surface. So you know that your skin is dry surface, right? Skin is dry surface. Non-keratinized are found in moist surfaces, wet surfaces. For example, inside your mouth, it is wet, right? So moist. Inside the mouth, or oral cavity, lining of mouth, esophagus. Okay. Inside the vagina, female reproductive part. So in those structures, you have non-keratinized stratified squamous. Now, in one sentence, if I say where you will find the stratified squamous, those areas you have more chance of friction, getting more chance of what? Friction. You have stratified squamous because many layers protect the structure. Okay, gives protection. So, you know that your skin, we eat all the time, when we chew the food, the cells are dying, right? So, many layers really help to protect the internal organs. Uh, esophagus is a narrow tube. When you swallow the food causes friction to the wall of the esophagus. Okay, so protection is the main function. Transitional epithelium. The cells change their shape. Transitional epithelial tissue has two important properties, very important. How many? Two. Number one, they can easily get stretched, can take pressure. Number two, they prevent reabsorption. Prevent Now the question is, what do you mean by reabsorption? Reabsorption means it will prevent the fluid getting back into the body. Prevent the fluid from getting back into the body. Those are two important properties. Now, if you know those two properties, you can tell where you will find the transitional epithelium. Urinary bladder. Inside the urinary bladder you have what? Urine, right? Urinary bladder has urine. And you know that when your bladder gets filled with urine, the bladder gets what? Big, right? A lot of pressure in the wall. So the transitional epithelial cells can take that pressure, can get stretched. Make sense? Number one. Number two, do you want your urine to get back into the body? No. That's why you have the transitional lining, so it will not let the urine get back into the body through the wall. Make sense? It will stay there and will get out from the body. So, number one, urinary bladder. Another structure that contains the urine is the ureter, the tube takes the urine from the kidney to the bladder. you definitely don't want the urine get back into the body through the wall of the ureter, right? So you have transitional epithelium. So urine will not get back into the body. Stratified cuboidal and columnar. Those two types of tissues are present in very few structures in our body. They are rarely present. Limited distribution in our body. Just remember the name. Stratified cuboidal is present in the mammary gland, female breast. Stratified columnar is found in a small amount in the pharynx, male urethra, and lining of some glandular ducts. So those are present in very few amounts or small number. Stratified columnar. Okay, so those are the things you need to know from the epithelial tissue. I'm quickly going to review. First, you need to know the location of different types of tissues, right? I have gone through that. Number two, you need to know the classification of epithelial tissue, how we classify the epithelial tissue, right? Based on the shape and arrangement as well as the location. Number three, you need to know the important characteristics of epithelial tissue or properties of epithelial tissue. Those are the things I have talked. Then we have talked about the locations and how they look like under the microscope, right? So those are the things basically you need to know. And locations, those I have mentioned, those are important locations. Definitely, you need to remember those. Okay, I did not mention all the locations, but those are the important locations.